What up, what up, what up? Happy Monday. Welcome back to the Whimsical Rebels. Hashtag Whimsdom Sessions, always complimentary. Complimentary. Sorry I was not here last week for them. I did go live about 2 topics on my own page, but last week was kind of flumpy, and I'm so grateful that you guys let me open up to you about it. And this week we're back on track, and I want to talk to you about why traumatic experiences involving those that we love, especially those that people pleasers are directly responsible for, children, pets, these sort of things. Why are these traumatic experiences such triggers for people pleasers? Also, it seems completely unrelated, but I'm going to tie them together because you know how I do. But masturbating, the concept of masturbating, the concept of looking at people pleasing as an addiction. This is still something that's not really done in our day-to-day life. It's looked at as a personality type, like INFJ or being an extrovert or something like that, or an Enneagram. But this is not a personality type, and it is in fact an addiction. It is in fact a syndrome. So I want to talk about it and really get into the specifics of that and compare it, dun 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 dun, to things like sex addiction, which is why the term masturbating is, we'll get all into it. It's a phenomenally hilarious, but like so on point, it's scary term. So if you are new to this group, my name is Audrey Kent. I am your guide through people-pleasing addiction recovery. What up, viewer? If you're watching this live, post below, say hey, say where you're watching from. Let me know that you can hear me, because sometimes these headphones are weird. They're noise canceling in every sense of the word. But yeah, just like thumbs up and comments, let me know. If you're watching the recording, let me know where you're watching from. Comment on the stuff. Let's keep the conversation going afterward. But again, my name is Audrey Kent. I'm your guide through people-pleasing addiction recovery, and every day I help women kick people-pleasing addiction in the balls. Move into recovery from people-pleasing addiction, the thing that is strangling so many aspects of their lives. And I do this in my self-paced program, People Pleasers Autonomous Method. I also do this in my one-on-one work with my clients in exclusive therapy sessions. So whatever your method of getting help is, girl, I got something for you. But I cannot tell you everything you need to know unless you ask. Don't ever be afraid to reach out. Don't ever be embarrassed. It's just a beautiful conversation to be had, no matter where the dice may fall. You just got to do it, okay? So let's get back to the topic. Now, if you saw my post earlier, if you follow me, then you saw that my dog Zeus, where is he? That one. You see him? The black and white one. Gave us a heart attack last night. Apparently, before we went out shopping for pillows, as you do on Sundays, he went out into the backyard and he grabbed a stick. And he chomped down on it so hard that it punctured the roof of his mouth, like way in the back by his molar. We didn't know that this had happened. It hadn't started bleeding. We let them out before we left. We got them inside, gave them treats, and we left. When we came home several hours later, blood everywhere. I thought my dogs had eaten each other. It was horrific. Everyone seemed fine. They were acting fine. We let them go outside. I cleaned Zeus up. We got all the blood off of him, and I could not find where this blood was coming from. Sorry, this is graphic, but there's a point to it all. I did not know where all this blood was coming from. And I felt it starting to kind of tap into, now they just kind of sound like echoes to me in this sonic field, like as if it's far away. But I do remember what, they didn't used to be echoes when I was in the full throes of people-pleasing addiction. They were people screaming in my ears. They were internal voices going, fucking mayday, shit's about to explode. Oh my God, we're losing control. But I noticed that I could kind of hear the echoes of what used to happen when a situation like this, like when shit hit the fan, when someone that I loved and was responsible for was hurting. We took him to the vet because we couldn't find the source of the bleeding. The bleeding wouldn't stop. I didn't know if it was coming from his throat or what, and we didn't know if his cancer was back. We took him into the ER, and they sedated him to find the bleed. He ended up coding because as an older dog, he was sensitive to the anesthetic, but they were able to revive him. He, as you can see, is just fat and happy and sleeping and well. But I got home and I was thinking about all the ways that I old me, years and years and years ago, would have reacted to this situation. I was also thinking about all the ways that some of my clients would have reacted to this situation, thinking about how my own mother would have reacted to the situation, and all the ways that society used to tell me to react. What up, Sierra? Let me know if you can hear me and that these are working. But all the ways that society told me that I should react to that situation. And I started thinking about it and thinking of the ways to break it down and how I could deliver, because I knew there was a potent message in there. And I decided that the way to deliver it is to discuss why. Like, why is that such a trigger for people pleasers? Because if we think about it, people pleaser should just be like totally in love with the idea of like, oh my God, I'm suddenly needed. There's a traumatic experience happening around me to the rescue. But that's not the case, because it is an addiction. It's not a hobby. It's not a pleasure. It's an addiction. Well, it is a type of pleasure. We'll get into that in a minute with the concept of masturbating. But the reason why traumatic events to people that we love and care about, or our pets, our children, are so much of a trigger for a people pleaser is because it directly taps into our fear of the uncontrollable. Every type of people pleaser, I don't care if you're a pit bull, a mouse, a phoenix, if you don't know which type you are, go take the free quiz. It is in the text for the welcome video of this group. But no matter what type of people pleaser you are, no matter if you were born into it as a way of living, no matter if you developed it as a result of an abusive relationship, you're going to have the need to control. That's part of it. People pleasing is the need to control people's ideas of us, people's perceptions of us, people's affections toward us. On so many basement levels, there's so many reasons why this is going on. Self-doubt, feeling undeserving of actual, genuine, organic love. So many things. This is why it is so important to find yourself a people-pleasing guide. Right here, if we connect, if you feel me. But the reason that this is so triggering, and it's not a great thing when a traumatic situation happens, is that it taps into that fear of the uncontrollable. It goes straight to the source. It bypasses all the other stuff that could maybe send us on a downward spiral and just taps right into the core issue. And this directly relates to the concept of masturbating. And here is why. The reason I think masturbating is such a funny word and so apropos for people pleasing, the term was coined by Dr. Harriet Breaker in her book, The Disease to Please. And though I disagree with plenty of things in the book, and I come at it from a different approach simply because it's a lot of traditional psychology versus what I help my clients do. But she was absolutely right in coining that phrase, coining that term, masturbation. And it's because if we look at people pleasing as an addiction, stop treating it like it's some sort of behavioral anecdote, some sort of personality type. Look at it as an actual addiction. And not worry about the conversation of, is addiction a disease or a syndrome? We're looking at it as an addiction. Addiction being to describe the manifestation of dependency on either a substance or an activity, a behavioral pattern. So if we look at people pleasing as an addiction, you can see how it coincides with every other addiction. And that is being in control of your own dopamine release. And that's directly tied into the fear of the uncontrollable and being in control, just like sex addiction. Being in control of your own dopamine release, and then thanks to the reward system in our brains and our neural patterns, we, if you have an addictive personality, can't control the downward spiral if you are in control of your own pleasure receptors. You're in control of your own reward system. So if we're in control of our pleasure as people pleasers, it gives us pleasure, which is why it's so selfish to partake in people pleasing. We're in control of the feel goods that we get when we take care of somebody, whether they ask for it or not. That's a whole other lesson, but we're in control of that. Feeling needed, whether it's asked for, whether it's reciprocated, whether it's appreciated. Feeling needed is what triggers our dopamine release for people pleasing addiction. And being in control of that is everything, no matter what type of people pleaser you are. So when a traumatic event happens to someone that you feel in some way responsible for, whether it's like a best friend, a child, or a pet, When that happens, suddenly your brain goes, oh my God, I'm not in control. It taps into your mortality. And you go, oh my God, I'm not in control. What can I do? And then you go overboard, and your downward spiral as a people pleaser is triggered. Now, for some people, this is being triggered into being the helper. I'm sure you all know people pleasers out there. When something bad happens, it's like they slap on their Superman cape, they come to the rescue, they try to fix everything, they clean, they make food, they handle all the phone calls, they butt into everything, which seems like they're just the superwoman on the outside, but really it's them desperately trying to cling to their own control of that dopamine receptor. It's a binge downward spiral for people pleasers when they put that cape on. And it's a fascinating thing to witness, and it's crippling and it's scary. And when it's someone that, when it's not the kind of situation where you can put on a cape. So say it is, oh my God, I could have lost my dog, or oh my God, I've lost my dog. Something happens that just bangs on the door of your fear of the uncontrollable. Then you go overboard in the other type of way, which is the amplification of the situation. And that's because if you can amplify it, then you can control the feel-goodery that ends up surrounding it. And it's not the same as, I guess to some people it might be people that don't really understand people-pleasing addiction and aren't people-pleasers themselves. But it's not the same as just exaggerating stuff for the sake of exaggerating stuff. It's something about, I'm going to harness this pain. I am going to find a way to involve the people that I know will give me the response that I need for my own healing. And I will recount this issue. I will do this. And I texted some close friends, be like, hey, send Zeus some love. This happened last night. It was crazy, because it was crazy and I wanted to share it. But the part of me remembering all the people that I've known growing up and all the different types of people pleasers who would have just worn it as an identity for the next several weeks. And it's a form of self-sabotage. And it's also a form of taking back control of their dopamine release. Because suddenly they're not in control of taking care of someone. It was proven to them. Their mortality was tested. It was proven there's nothing they could do. But if they harness it as an identity, then they can control getting the types of reactions from people that are going to make them feel safe, that are going to make them feel better. It's baiting. It's baiting for reassurance. And it's just the other side of that scary downward spiral, because people pleasers just like scrapple. Is that a word? Scrapple? Sure. For any sense of control. So think about that the next time a scary event happens, like you almost get in a wreck, or something terrible happens to a friend of yours and you fly into the rescue. Not that you shouldn't help people you love, but really think about, if you are a people pleaser, are you willingly strapping in for the downward spiral and grappling? That's what I was trying to say. Grappling for control, for any sense of control. Or are you actually living the situation and being in the moment and taking and learning the lessons that you need to learn, and not just desperately trying to control something to make yourself feel better, to get that dopamine release? And it is very much the same as sex addiction. When you are in control of that dopamine release, you ride that spiral. And that's why I think the term masturbation is just such inappropriate. It's the one thing in that book that I just agree with 1,000%. And it really helps bring people-pleasing as an addiction to the forefront, to help people really wrap their minds around it. And again, not about the conversation of whether addiction is a disease or a syndrome. That's not what we're talking about, but looking at people-pleasing as an addiction. And personally, I believe it being a syndrome, but looking at it as an addiction, and looking at it as it is the manifestation of a dependency on a particular type of behavior. because you've manifested that dependency, because your brain went, ooh, we can make ourselves feel good. If we can't get the love that we feel we're supposed to get, we can create this faux sense of love and release a little bit of dopamine every time we do it. Despite whether or not it's actually hurting us in the long run, despite whether or not it's actually putting everybody else ahead of us, despite whether or not it's actually destroying relationships one at a time, we can control our dopamine in this sense. And so just like any other addiction, it is that debilitating. It is that soul crushing. It is that derailing for every people pleaser. And if you don't find recovery from any addiction, it will systematically destroy every single part of your life. It is not a personality type. It is an addiction. And even if it just starts as, I have trouble speaking up for myself at work, that is losing the control, introducing that addiction. And if you don't seek recovery for that spiral, it will systematically fuck everything up. So if you would like to know more about people-pleasing addiction, obviously it's my favorite thing to talk about. I'm very, very passionate about it. I will talk to anyone about it. So any questions you have, please feel free to ask. Do not be afraid to reach out if you feel like you're suffering from people-pleasing addiction. You're not alone, and you don't have to do any of the recovery alone, okay? The hardest part is just speaking up and going, can we kind of talk about it? And that's the last hard thing you're going to have to do on your own in your recovery. I want to be there holding your hand and showing you the life that you can actually have. Not the one that like looks good for those types of people, but I could never have it. No, I want to show you what you actually, not just that you can have, but you actually deserve. Okay? I love you guys so, so much. Again, if you're watching the recording, please, what about egoism? Egoism. Egoism. Elaborate on that. I'm actually going to hang out here and wait, because this has like a 20-second delay, and wait for that to pop on. It just showed me that you were on, and then that question came in, so I don't know how long you've been watching, so I don't know what that question is in regard to as far as everything else that we talked about in the video. So I will wait for a moment to get some clarification on that question, and then we'll hit it. We'll figure it out. I don't think... Yeah, the thing that I'm thinking of for egoism might not be what... Yes. Well, what are you saying yes to? I hate the delay in Facebook Lives. So I'm just going to keep talking about all the different ways that you can seek recovery while she reiterates the question. Yeah, so the different types of recovery there's so many different... It's a form of people-pleasing. Do you mean adopting others? Do you mean tapping into empathy as a form of defense and adopting others' energies and mannerisms and echoing their sentiment, that kind of thing? Yeah, let's keep talking about that. Any sort of resource information, like if you guys have done research on your own, please share it in the group, share it with me. I love to talk about these things. I love to see all the different, and I say all the different, there's really not that many different studies on it. There's really not that many different professionals out there. As far as I know, I'm actually the only people-pleasing recovery guide that works in this sort of facet one-on-one with clients and isn't a strict traditional psychology or psychiatry route. So I love to hear anything else that you guys find out there where abusive behavior causes the person to lose all self. Yeah. So there's that type of abusive behavior, when you absorb somebody else's identity, that can happen even if you're not a people pleaser, because you don't have to be a people pleaser to be an abuse victim. It's a slippery slope. There's a fine line, and you are most likely dipping your toes in both at the same time. But you can be one without the other. But as far as with people pleasing, doesn't matter what type you are. Every single type of people pleaser suffers. If you want to call it, narcissistic abuse leads to egoism. Yeah, absolutely. For people pleasers, I don't look at it when I'm helping my clients. I don't look at it as that being a result of abuse, because if we look back into the source of their people-pleasing journey, if you will, the source of the addiction where it started, most of the time it began before the big narcissistic relationship that they think is actually the thing that perpetuated their addiction. They were actually able to get into that relationship because they were already in the throes of their addiction. And that is the slippery slope. So yes, some people can become people-pleasing addicts after an abusive relationship. Some people are just victims, and then once they get out of the relationship, they're not actually people-pleasers. They're just like, whoa, I can't believe I was so blind for like 2 years, you know. But for people-pleasers, we don't actually, the ones I work with, I don't work with my clients as far as treating the symptoms of one particular abuse. We go back further and we figure out what was the actual trigger and what elicited the people-pleasing addiction in the first place. But absolutely absorbing someone's identity. And that can happen. I'm sure egoism, narcissistic parent leads to it also. Oh yeah. And also there's parenting methods that aren't narcissistic, but if the child develops as a people-pleasing addict, it will still occur, even if the parent isn't a narcissist. So it's, if egoism is the terminology, I'm not sure which doctor coined the term egoism, but if egoism is the terminology for the identity loss suffered by a narcissistic abusive victim, then it's very closely related and can definitely overlap and be what's going on for a lot of people. The clients that I have had, that hasn't actually been the case with them because we have been able to find what happened before that relationship and how the addiction was actually present before that. And be able to find that it wasn't just the narcissistic boyfriend or whoever that they were absorbing the identity of, it's actually everyone around them. Whoever they're around, they were absorbing that identity. And this is commonly mistaken for empathy because people pleasers are empaths, hand in hand. Whether you're a compassionate empath, that needs to be figured out. But being able to absorb someone else's energy and then absorb their identity, that is a people-pleasing trait. And that is, again, commonly mistaken for empathy because it's like, oh, I just absorb the energy of whoever I'm around. But it's like, actually, no, your empathy wasn't even tapped in that moment. Your social anxiety was tapped in that moment, and you just wanted to make everyone in the room feel comfortable, you know, and that's why it's so important. Empathy is such a strong driving mechanism and a crutch for so many people pleasers. And that's why one of my favorite things to do, and I have an entire module in my program, but one of my favorite things to do is help my clients harness the ability to grab the gift of empathy, because it is it's a beautiful thing to have an exacerbated sense of empathy, because so many people don't. And it's a gift, but be able to actually recognize the curse that can also come out of it. So yeah, fantastic question. Thank you so much. If you have any extra thoughts about it, keep them rolling. And again, you guys, don't be embarrassed to reach out. Let's talk about it. There's so many different forms of getting started and being able to get on your journey of recovery. Again, I have my self-paced program. I do one-on-one therapy sessions with my clients, including the program. If you're the kind of person that's like, I want someone to hold my hand through this, I don't just want to sit back on my own, we can do that too. I also have tons of free offerings on my website, audrey.com. In this group, in the welcome video, there's the free people pleaser type quiz. There's the free 90-minute Lady Balls roadmap session. If you want to know what it's like working with me, girl, you're gonna have 90 minutes all to yourself, and you'll get to see whether we actually connect and want to work together, okay? And then also there's this free group. If this group is helping you, everything in here is shareable. I always try to put out pretty shareable names for every concept that we go over. We do these complimentary #Whimsdom sessions every Monday and Friday. If you have a topic that you would like to have covered, just put it in the comments, message me, whatever you want to do. I will talk about anything that you want to talk about as it pertains to people pleasers. I love you guys so much. Please have an amazing Monday. It's the start to a beautiful week, and I will see you